Awesome. Well, we'll get started here right promptly on time. Welcome, everybody. My name is Peter Bartell. I work on the career team here. My title is Employer Relations, but thanks for having you all. Welcome to the session. Just a quick update, and then I'll get to housekeeping items here. Coca-Cola could not make it. She had something else conflicting with work. However, the great news is topic hasn't changed. We have somebody fine and professional and willing to give us the information that's top notch in her field, Andrea Rathbun, with us. So we'll get started and into it, but just wanted to update everybody there. So we're excited to have you all for Career Day 2023. My name is Peter Bartell, as I just said, and I will introduce our presenter, Andrea Rathbun, on the topic of digital interviewing today. And discuss our session guidelines. After that, we'll spend about 30 to 45 minutes addressing your career questions. So quick housekeeping announcements here. This session is being recorded and there is no obligation to have your camera on or to use the chat to participate in the session. You can turn on captions for this session by selecting the More button at the top of your screen and selecting Turn on Live Captions from the drop-down menu. Your microphone will remain muted throughout the session. You won't have capability to enable it, so just in case you try, that's why you won't be able to. The chat is available throughout the session, and we encourage you to share your questions and reflections. Kelsey Ramfos is here, and Megan Bickford and myself, and we will all work on the career team, and we'll be logging in the chat and corresponding with you throughout Andrea's presentation. So yeah, absolutely feel free to put questions in the chat. We definitely encourage it. We ask that you be kind and refrain from using any inappropriate language or sharing any offensive content. We're all here to learn and engage with this community, and we appreciate your cooperation on that. Please do not photograph, screenshot, or record anyone in attendance. And presentation slides may contain clickable links for those viewing in this presentation on a mobile device. We will include the links in the chat as well so that you can retrieve them at the end of the session without being taken out of the session. You will also see the Teams offers helpful presentation options like changing the written language of the slides and the opportunity to move through the slides at your own pace. If you move the slides and wish to get back to the slide currently being discussed, please select the red box that says Sync to Presenter and note that this will not impact anyone else's viewing experience. And also ask questions throughout. We will be looking at the chat. I will log them and make sure that I address them to Andrea after her presentation concludes. But absolutely throughout the presentation, feel free to ask your questions. We'll go into access and accommodations. So I'd like to share SNHU's access and accommodations information, which serves as a reminder of resources available for our community members. Your experience here at Southern New Hampshire University is important to us. It is our policy and practice to create an inclusive and accessible learning environment. If there are aspects of this presentation's design or delivery that present barriers to accessibility, please notify the appropriate department. And I'll read through your departments here. For online students, please connect with the Online Accessibility Center by emailing oac@snhu.edu or by phone at 866-305-9430. For campus students, please contact the Campus Accessibility Center by emailing cac@snhu.edu or by phone at 603-644-3118. And for staff and faculty, please contact the Human Resources Office by emailing hr@snhu.edu. Great, so we will get to introducing our presenter now, Andrea Rathbun. I'm thrilled to introduce her on the topic of digital interviewing. Andrea is a talent acquisition consultant here at Southern New Hampshire University. She is a member of the academic hiring team and leads SNHU's military hiring initiative. She is a disabled combat veteran and the spouse of an active duty service member. Andrea, thanks so much for serving our country and furthermore being a part of this presentation with us here on digital interviewing. And you guys can see here, you can toggle back when she starts presenting, but her QR code is there. So if you wanted to connect with her on LinkedIn, you can just scan your camera over it and link it up that way. So without further ado, Andrea, I will pass it to you. I'm going to stop sharing and you can present your screen.
Awesome. Okay. I've never been a QR code before, so that's exciting to start with. Um, There we go. Okay.
Gotcha.
Yes. So I am Andrea Rathbun. As Peter mentioned, I am with the talent acquisition team. I hire all of our adjunct faculty for liberal arts. I also am a SNHU alum, so I saw somebody in the chat is getting their master's in English and creative writing. So that is my degree as well. So I'm glad you're here today, and I'm happy to present. I'm not with Coca-Cola, but I think that you'll still find most of the information very helpful. So my hair looked better that day. So picture my hair that way now, please. Okay. So for success in a digital interview, we're going to go through how did you get to this stage in the process, how to prepare for the digital interview, what to address in your digital interview, and what to do next. So the first thing to know about the digital interview process and how you got there is you checked your email. And this sounds really funny, but it's really important, especially as you start to apply for jobs. A lot of things are going to go to your spam inbox, no matter how you set it up, no matter the settings that you adjust on your inbox, on your email. So just continue to check all of your folders, come up with a way to track what you've applied for. I also recommend just having a separate email account specifically for job seeking, and that can be something that really just contains your name, maybe a number in your name, depending on how common your name is. But really checking your email is going to be the first stage of this. And I say this because the interview and the hiring process can move really quickly. So with some candidates, I'm reaching out to them 2 or 3 days after sending them a digital interview invite, and they haven't done anything, they haven't responded to me. If I don't hear from them in a week, a lot of times I'm going to move forward with another candidate. So it sounds silly, it sounds small, but the biggest step is knowing that you've got into the digital interview process so they can move forward with that. The other part of being in a digital interview process, and this is something that you should really take to heart and understand, is if you get to that point, you have met all of the must-haves. They wouldn't have moved you forward from applying to a job to sending you to the digital interview if you were not qualified to do the job. So you're qualified to do the job, and that is great news. You presented those qualifications, you've done a good job of that, and now you've made it to where they want to hear more from you. But also keep in mind that everyone else at the digital interview stage has met all of those requirements too. So it's no longer about those preferred or those minimum qualifications and the must-haves. Now it's about how can you make yourself stand out? How can you make yourself make it clear that you can do above and beyond the minimum of what they're looking for, and how you can do a better job than who's standing next to you. So how do you prepare? The first thing is going to be a tech check. So really look at your computer, make sure you have all of the software that you need, make sure that your camera's working right, make sure that your microphone's working right. A lot of times settings are going to be weird in your computer, and you might start a digital interview and it's not hooked up to your computer audio right, so it's not picking up. So we're not hearing what you need to say. So just that simple tech check is going to eliminate a lot of that headache. Also an environment scan. So take a look around you. I have my pretty cow in the background. I love this cow. He spends the day with me. I get a lot of comments about him. And for the most part, it's not something that I would worry about. Now, on the other hand, if I had, which is behind me sometimes, a laundry basket full of clothes behind me, if I had my barking dogs behind me, if I had trash from last night behind me, that's going to be a different thing. So do take a minute to just look around you and see what's in your environment. Do that environment scan because it will show up on camera. Next, review the job description. And the reason this is important is because there's going to be questions in the digital interview process that refer back to what you would actually be doing in that job. So it's important to understand what that job is, especially if you're applying for multiple jobs that are similar. Going back, taking a look at that job description and really understanding what they're looking for is going to be important. Another thing, and this kind of goes back to being prepared, having that different email account, tracking what jobs you're applying for, really track the jobs you're applying for. My recommendation would be not just to save the URLs, but to copy and paste the job description onto a separate document, because once a job is no longer posted, and that oftentimes happens in the digital interview process, because that means we've collected as many applicants as we want, and we're no longer going to take down that job. We're not collecting any more applicants. So you're not going to have access to that job description if you haven't saved that job description. So again, taking a step back when you're applying for jobs, copy and paste that job description, save it as a Word document so you have it for future review. What to address in the digital interview process. And this is really what's going to make you stand out. Again, if you've made it to this step in the process, you've met all of those minimum requirements. You can almost think of the application process as a funnel. So at the top, we have 100 candidates. All 100 candidates have applied for this job. They're all on equal footing. Every time we move through a step, we need that candidate pool to get smaller and smaller until we get to 1 or 2 candidates. So you started out at the top of the funnel, you met the requirements to get you to the digital interview. We're at the digital interview stage, and really it's a screening out process. At this point, it's not just about who I want to talk to. In the next step, it's about who I don't need to talk to, who I can't talk to, or who I don't want to talk to. And this is what this is where you can make yourself stand out. So going back to the job description, look at the preferred qualifications. Look at what are they saying they're nice to haves instead of their must haves. So it says you have to have a minimum of a bachelor's degree, but also would like you to have experience in digital marketing. Okay, well now we know not everyone's going to have digital marketing experience. Everyone's going to have that degree, so I don't need to talk about my degree. They know I have the degree. But it's only asking for preferred digital marketing experience. That means the person next to me in line might not have digital marketing experience. How can I make it clear in the digital interview that I do have that experience? So pay attention to those preferred qualifications, have those in mind, even jot down notes. I know people get nervous sometimes about taking notes for a digital interview, about looking off screen, about looking like you're reading off a script. Honestly, as a recruiter, that just makes me think that you prepared and that you took the time to think through your questions. I'm never going to knock somebody because they look down to look at notes or because they sound a little bit scripted, because again, that lets me know that they care enough to have prepared for an interview. I'd rather have somebody do that than somebody give me a 10-word answer because they didn't take the time to prepare and they didn't know what they really wanted to say. So take those notes, write things down, refer back to your notes. That's all fine. Also think of examples of success. I know that you've probably heard of the STAR interview technique where you're going to give examples of past successes. A lot of times, I just saw somebody drop STAR in the chat box, so that's awesome. That was great timing. So that's wonderful. Yes, definitely STAR interview method. So when you are thinking about the preferred qualifications, if you can think of an example of a time that you had success with those qualifications or that you had a similar success in the past, bring that with you to the digital interview because those types of behavioral questions will be asked. Can you tell me about a time when? And when that type of question is asked, we're not asking for generalities. So a big question might be, can you tell me about a time where you've received feedback? Most employers want to know that you can work with feedback, that you can adapt to feedback, and that you're open to feedback. A lot of times candidates will say, I love feedback. Feedback is wonderful. I always want to improve based on feedback. That's awesome. You'd answer the question. Tell me about a time where you received feedback. So those really concrete examples are what's going to help you to stand apart from other people. So again, examples of successes, I would prepare 2 or 3 ahead of time that can be adapted to different types of questions because those will be asked. And then also enthusiasm for the role. I know that digital interviews just seem like another step in the process. And sometimes we're even going to ask you things where you go, well, that was on my resume. You asked that in the application process. Why am I answering this question again? I get it, but it is a step in the process. And if we don't feel like you have enough enthusiasm for the role to show up and give us your best self for 30 minutes for a digital interview, then we can't have the confidence that you're going to show up and bring your best self to work 8 hours a day. So yes, it's a step in the process. It's one more thing you have to do. Sometimes it feels redundant, but if you really want that job, you're going to give it your all for 30 minutes. That's all it is. So bring that enthusiasm. Tell me what you love about this company. Let me know that you know what company you're applying for. Refer to the company by name. I'm applying to Southern New Hampshire University because then I know that you know who we are, you recognize who we are, and you have a reason to want to be here. So yes, definitely that enthusiasm. But also know with digital interviews, there are often recorded answers, but then there's at times components of written answers. So be prepared to also write your answers, and that in that too, give robust answers, not one or two sentences. This is where you're going for paragraphs. If you think about it kind of like your classes and your curriculum, you're not looking for, in your discussion posts, you're really looking for that 3-paragraph initial discussion. We really want to hear from you. Give us something robust. Use the time and the space that we give you to express yourself. Honestly, if somebody is too wordy and they wrote more that I'm prepared for or more than I need to know from them, the worst that's going to happen is I'm going to scan it and say, oh no, I see all the main points. They're saying all the things that I need them to say. I can move them to the next step. On the other hand, if you say too little, I can't interpret something you didn't say. So it's always going to be better to be a little bit more robust. Again, if I don't have time to read every single word, I'm going to scan and make sure that you hit all of the major points and move you forward. If you don't hit those points because you didn't write enough, I have nothing to move you forward. There's nothing to base that on to move you to the next step. And again, that shows enthusiasm for the role. It shows me that you researched the role, that you cared about the role, and you took the time to write a little bit more. Okay, so then what to do next? Relax. This is the biggest thing. Take a deep breath because I don't know about you guys, but when I get done with this presentation and when I get done with the digital interview, I'm going to sit and think about everything that I didn't say, everything that I wish I would have said, all of the things that I misspoke. I'm going to go back and count all of the times I said in my head, and I wish I hadn't said so much, but I did. And there's nothing that I can do about that process now. So relax. Take a deep breath, get up from your computer, walk away, go outside, walk around the block. Just really take a breath and take that minute to congratulate yourselves for being brave enough to put yourself on camera trying to express why you want this job, because that is intimidating. And also that you made it to that step in the process. That's huge. So relax for a second. Focus on what you did well. Take a minute to really think about how you expressed yourself well, how you made yourself a very viable and wonderful candidate, and pat yourself on the back. Be proud of those moments of excellence that you showed in your interview process. Reflect on them and also understand them so you can repeat them in the future. On the other hand, take a minute to know anything you didn't address. What did I not say? What did I want to say that didn't come out? What preferred qualification did I not express well? What questions might they have about my experience or desire for this role that I have not yet addressed in that digital interview process? Make a note of that, and then there's the magic of the follow-up email. A follow-up email does a lot of great things. As a recruiter, I might check my digital interviews every day, but most of the time, if I'm waiting on a digital interview and it's been a couple weeks, or if it's been 2 or 3 days, I might not check today. But if I get an email prompting me that says, I completed this interview, I'm so excited to hear about next steps, it's more likely that if I have a couple minutes today, I'm going to go in and check and take a look at that digital interview. So it lets me know that you're excited, that you finished that interview, that you've got to the next step, and that I have somebody waiting that I can communicate with. Also, use that follow-up email to address anything you didn't say. Oh, I really enjoyed the digital interview process. I was hoping to have time to tell you a little bit more about my social media marketing skills, but the opportunity didn't really arise. So let me tell you about my social media marketing skills. Give me 3 bullet points. You just had another opportunity to tell me more about yourself and to tell me why you're the best candidate that you might have missed out on the past. So that follow-up email can do a lot of things, but definitely take advantage of having that contact information for the recruiter that you can reach out to them directly. So send that follow-up email. Those are my big things. So those really were my main points. Most organizations are going to use different interview platforms. We currently use Harbor. In the past, we used HireVue. 2 months from now, we might use something else, and that's going to be kind of across organizations and industries. Is that digital interviewing is not going away, but there's a lot of different platforms to use it on. So it's just going to be very dependent. So I didn't go too much into that, but if you do have some questions about those platforms, I'll try to answer them as much as I can. But I do want to open it up for any questions, just in general, or any help that I can give you guys in this. And that's the other thing, digital interviewing is not going away. I promise. It's only going to get bigger. So even if you hate it, it's time to get good at it, because it's not going anywhere. But I did see a lot of questions coming through. Peter, did you have them in order, or should I just start addressing?
Yeah, good to go. Thanks again for the presentation. So definitely into Q&A now. Yeah, they're coming through. Thanks, guys. Keep them coming. But Tammy had the first one. When should we send the follow-up email?
Honestly, I would send it within an hour of completing the digital interview, because it's not sending an email for no reason. So as a recruiter, if we have a phone screening and you send me a digital interview in a week from now, or I'm sorry, if we have a phone screening and you send me a follow-up email a week from now asking for information, sometimes if I had information, I would have given it to you. But during the digital interview process, it's a little bit flipped. You have information that I want, because I want your digital interview to be complete. So now you have an action item. You have a reason to reach out to me as a recruiter, because you have completed a task that I asked you for. So as soon as that task is completed, I would send that email again within an hour of completing the digital interview process. I don't, Peter, you're muted.
You muted Peter.
Oh, gotcha. Thank you. I just said makes sense. Thank you, Andrea. The next one is from Dana. What would you say are the most common interview questions asked in a virtual interview?
So number one is always going to be almost across the board, and you will probably get asked it again in the actual interview, is tell me about yourself, and tell me about your past experience. That is always going to be number one. Most digital interview screenings are going to be set up where you have about 2 to 3 minutes to answer a question. We give you that time because we want that much information. I want you to tell me about yourself for 2 to 3 minutes. I don't want to hear just, this is my name, this is where I'm from, move on. Tell me more about yourself. Tell me about what makes you a good candidate for this role. Tell me about why you want this role. Tell me about what you like to do, and how you got here. But that's always going to be number one. Again, I think feedback is another really big one. Can you tell me how you work with feedback? And it will come in a lot of forms. Tell me about a time you received feedback. Tell me about how you've worked with feedback. Tell me about your reaction to feedback. That's going to be another one. And then beyond that, it's going to become more questions about the actual job. So some questions you might encounter is, how do you work on a team? What types of leadership styles do you like? How do you like to be led? Those are more general questions that are going to go across industry.
And on the same topic, so I'm going to switch order here. There was one that came through on the tell me about some of your weaknesses question. So would you say, Andrea, is the proper way to answer this question?
I will, for one, say that I don't think that this question is as common as it used to be. So I don't see it as much. I think that it's more behavioral based now. So it might even be, tell me about a time where you weren't successful, or tell me about a time where you had to overcome an obstacle. I think those are going to be more common now than tell me about one of your weaknesses. I do think it's not as common. I would have a weakness in mind. So kind of in the same vein, I do ask, tell me about a time you receive feedback. And it's always a red flag if somebody goes, well, I only get positive feedback. there's nothing, you've never had somebody tell you you can improve upon anything ever in your life. You only have ever gotten positive feedback. That's not very self-aware, and it's not letting me know that you could receive feedback from me. So I don't think there's necessarily a wrong way to answer the tell me about a weakness question other than not having a weakness to share. My other tip would be, if you do share a weakness, share a way that you work to overcome a weakness. So for me, a weakness is I am not a multitasker. I don't like multitasking. I am not good at it. And so because I'm not good at multitasking, I create a very strict schedule for myself where I'm able to do things in an orderly fashion so I don't have to multitask. And if I'm in the middle of a task, I don't look at my email because I'm not going to be able to do both. So tell me about the weakness. Tell me about how you overcome the weakness.
Have that thought process laid out. That's good. I'm similar. I can't multitask, so singularly focused is the way to go. So Ryan O'Toole asked, this may be niche, but how do we stand out during an automated video interview, or AVI? AI conducted interviews. Some larger and highly coveted companies are implementing this technology. Are there tips on standing out against an ocean, possibly hundreds of thousands of applications?
So because I don't have experience with AI interviewing in particular, I won't go into specifics, and I do apologize for that. What I would say though is kind of going back to the beginning of this process is know that if you are a little bit further on and you're having that type of interview, maybe you went from thousands to hundreds. So it is a smaller candidate pool. So again, if you've gotten to that step, know that you're not competing with quite as many people. But I think the same types of information that we went over in this presentation go along. Tell me how you're different from everyone else. Tell me how you're exceptional. Tell me about the one thing that you're really exceptional at. Tell me about not just how you can contribute to this organization based on the job description. Tell me about your value add. So if we have 100 people who can do this job, what can you do for me outside of this job? And how will what you do for me outside of this job save me as an organization time or money? So what can you do outside of this job? What is that going to save me? Is that going to save me resources? I think those are the ways you really can stand out, is making me know how you will add value to my business as an organization. Yeah, and be specific. Somebody said that in the chat box. Again, generalities, they don't really tell me anything. Be as specific as possible.
Awesome. Ryan, that's an awesome question, I think, to ask on LinkedIn, just to kind of post on your wall and see if you're connected with recruiters, what they would say, or other job seekers. For me, just
like at recruiters, our hashtag recruiters love answering questions on LinkedIn. Like that is their bread and butter. Recruiters will answer questions on LinkedIn. So if you put something up there like that, and especially if you have a couple of recruiters in mind that you can add, it helps them. It helps promote them as a recruiter to answer your question.
So when you say at, like tag them in the comments or even in the post. Okay.
Yep.
Thanks. Yeah. Awesome. Tammy Detman asked, should we use a filter if we're not camera perfect?
I don't think so. I'm because of the way most organizations are trying to handle diversity in their recruiting process, we are trying as a whole industry to really move away from focusing on anything that has to do with that type of presentation. What I would say is, though, do appear professional, right? So that doesn't mean that I don't wear makeup. So for me, I'm not going to put on makeup for an interview. And that doesn't mean that you have to necessarily put on a tie. That doesn't mean that you necessarily have to. It's not any of that anymore. It's showing me that you took the time to prepare for this interview, including physically. So you took the time to brush your hair. Maybe it's brushing your hair. Maybe it's that you took the time, again, to remove distractions away from you. But the other part of that is I think that it's going to change the way you present yourself if you do not feel camera ready. So no filter is going to change the way that you're seeing yourself. So whatever's going to make you feel confident on camera, that's what you should do. But make sure you feel confident on camera, and also don't go into a digital interview in a way that you wouldn't show up for work. So be ready. This is how you would present yourself at work. You are showing them how you would show up every single day. A filter's not going to change that. And we might even ask, why are they using a filter? Show up like you would show up for work, and then you don't have to worry about it.
Awesome. Jacob asked a very intriguing question that I'm curious about as well. Share some of yours, please, your personal experiences. What do you think the most common mistakes are during during digital interviews? And maybe some specifically that you've had or things that you've seen on camera.
So I think really the short answer is not telling me a lot about yourself. I think when a question might be, why do you want this job? Why do you want to work here? Why are you interested in this role? We all know that you're here because you want a paycheck. We all know that people want to get paid for a job. You don't need to say it. And it's transparent. And a lot of times people will say, I know I shouldn't say this, and to be transparent, I'm here for the paycheck. Well, if you know you shouldn't say it, don't say it. We know that you want to get paid. We know that is an expectation. And then also, it really is more in the demeanor of feeling like, oh, I can't believe I have to go through this. I can't believe I have to do this thing in order to get a job. Again, I know digital interviewing is not the most fun. Very few people are going to be like, yes, I love doing digital interviews, but bring a positive attitude to the experience, because if you can't bring your best self for 30 minutes to check a box so we can move you forward, it doesn't add a lot of confidence that you're going to do it for 8 hours a day. So it's really in that demeanor and just not being robust enough in your answers. I did have somebody whose cat was like hacking in the background the whole time. So that's just like a funny story that wasn't very enjoyable. But that's kind of a one-off as opposed to a big thing.
Yeah. Thank you. We got 2 more. Keep the questions coming, though. We'll have time for more than 2. But the next one is from Sylvia. What is the importance of transferable skills, and what is the importance of transferable skills while changing careers, and how do you approach that in an interview?
So again, I would say that if you make it to the interview process, any interview, and it's based on transferable skills, they know that it's transferable skills, right? So they recognize that you're a career changer. They recognize that you haven't necessarily worked in the exact industry that you're trying to get into, or that you have not worked in the exact role that you are applying for. So if you've made it through the interview process, they've already recognized the value of your transferable skills, or you wouldn't be there. You wouldn't be in that step of the process. So now it's on you to make the connection between the transferable skills and what you will be doing in that new role. So I think a big one is always going to be customer service, right? I've worked with people in the past. I've worked with different types of people and had to communicate with them. I did that in a past role. That's my transferable skills. Also, how is that going to have a positive impact on my business now? So it's not on you just to present the transferable skills. It's now, let's make that connection. Give me an example of a time. For example, I do hire for adjuncts. So a lot of times adjuncts that I hire won't have formal teaching experience, but they will have training experience. They will have done large scale training in their job. So for them, they come in and say, I've conducted training, and during that training, I gave written feedback to my employees about what they needed to improve upon. And this is similar to the feedback that I would be giving to my students if I was brought on in as an instructor. So it's different. They did it in a different setting, but it's the same type of written communication skills. This is how I would use that transferable skill. This is my skill. This is how I would use it.
Thanks, Andrea. The next one is from Dana. What have been some of the best questions you've had an interviewee ask you in the "Do you have any questions" stage of the interview?
Um, I always like being asked what I like about working for SNHU. I like being able to brag about us as an employer. I like, for a second, I think it takes the pressure off the person who is getting interviewed, and it gives them a moment to breathe while I talk about what I really like to do, and why SNHU is of a value to me. And especially when they make the connection afterwards with something like, oh, that's really exciting. I also love working with students. I also love supporting students. I also love making learning accessible to everyone. So I think that that's always a really strong question. But also I think I like if a candidate is informed enough to ask a very specific question. So for example, if they ask something about, okay, can you tell me about how Southern New Hampshire University measures student retention and what impact student retention has on an instructor, and their continued employment with us. That's very specific. That lets me know that you've educated yourself, and that you understand the role and that you understand some of the ways you may be measured. Um, and then I think also just maybe asking what would surprise me about this role? Like what would surprise me if I took this role? What is something I haven't asked? What's something I don't yet know about this role? Because I think for one, again, it gives the interviewer time to tell you a little bit more about the role, but it also gives you, remember, you're interviewing us as well. So it gives you time to take in information and really make sure that this is a good role for you and a good fit for you too, because you're going like, what is something I haven't thought of? And is that going to be a good fit for me?
Gotcha. Yeah, I think you made a good point about being specific, and that Juan, one of our attendees, made a comment earlier. Do your research. So, I think if you don't do your research, you don't necessarily you're not equipped to maybe answer those questions, right? So,
Anything you can do in the interview process that shows me that you're informed.
gotcha.
Yeah. So for example, when we send an invite for a phone screening, we also send a Q&A page, or a FAQ page, where instructors can read about like so much of what they would do in this role. And so they can ask follow-up questions about that information. But a lot of times, if you're asking questions that make it very apparent that you skimmed the email and scheduled this phone conversation without really looking into the details of the interview, that to me is a little bit of a red flag. If I asked for information prior to, a lot of times before a phone screening, you'll be asked to enter references prior to even speaking to the recruiter, or you may be asked for documentation like we ask for transcripts. If I get on the phone call with you and you're like, oh, I had no idea I needed to enter transcripts. I had no idea I needed to enter references. It makes it very clear that you in no way read that email. And that's not necessarily the most positive impression.
So Vic asked, in the writing industry, specifically freelance, is there a way to overcome not having any paid experience? I know this isn't necessarily streamlined digital interviewing, but given your background, I thought it was a good question. Andrea.
Yeah. Um, I think the hardest thing about the freelance industry, and if you haven't had paid experience, is especially for many people who are in similar boat to me that have the creative writing degree, is most freelance work isn't going to be creative writing work. It's going to be informative writing. It's going to be maybe opinion pieces, but more, it might even be a product review piece, but it very rarely is going to be creative writing. So it's hard to highlight that you have skills outside of creative writing if you have never done that. So things like a blog, I know, but a blog that isn't creative work. That's what you're really going to need to be able to present as a freelance writer, is that you can do work outside of creative writing work. So creating things like blogs, volunteering, there's a lot of different places where you can start to put your pieces out there. You can even write pieces and post and publish them on LinkedIn. So there's going to be things like that. But again, make sure that if you're going into freelance writing, that you're creating things outside of creative writing, because that most of the time is not going to get you into the freelance freelance writing industry.
Helpful info. Thank you, Andrea. This will probably be the last question. May be able to squeeze two more in. It's from Arian Crimes. How do I tackle being a diverse candidate in a company that does not reflect what I look like?
So I think number one, understanding if you're. I think it depends on what your hesitation is about being a diverse candidate. Are you worried that they're not going to hire you because you don't look like them? Are you worried that you are not going to be comfortable in that environment because the other people in that environment don't look like you? So there's a couple of different stepping stones to being a diverse candidate. But at the end of the day, companies are companies. And again, they're looking for ways to make money and they're looking for ways to save money. So if you can tell me how you're going to do that, then I don't need you to look like me. I don't need you to think like me. And that's the other part of it. Tell me how you being different than me is going to be of value to me. So if you don't look like, if you're from a different part of the country, for me, you had different experiences than I do, then you probably have different ideas and thought processes than I do, which is wonderful. How is that going to have a positive impact on my organization? How is it going to add to me? How can you show me that you have thought of something that I've never thought of before and blow my mind? I think that's it. Really show me the advantage of you being different than me, and let's get to work. But make sure that you are comfortable too. Make sure that you're comfortable in presenting yourself as who you truly are, because that's the biggest thing. If you can look different than me, but be you. I want you to be you. I want to see you and be comfortable in you being you.
Awesome. Thank you. I think I want to read Joseph's comment he just put in the chat. I think that's really good. If the interviewer makes you feel like an outsider, in quotations, they will not be a good fit for you, no matter the pay or position. So, Joseph, thanks for that comment in addition to Andrea's comments.
Again, yeah. And if somebody, the truth is you're going to show up, you have to take yourself to work every day, no matter what you do. And so if an organization doesn't want you, it's horrible to say, but you probably don't want them either. Because again, you can't leave yourself at home while you go to work.
Yeah. Like you said, it's a two-way street. You know?
Absolutely.
So, cool. We'll conclude it, Andrea, if you want to stop sharing and then I'll reshare this one slide real quick. And then Kelsey's going to drop some info in the chat for us. As far as contact information. So that's okay if you can't figure it out. I'll just state it. So yeah, thanks Andrea for attending and presenting. Folks, audience, thanks for attending this digital interviewing session for sure. Click the Career Day link in the chat. Kelsey is going to share it in the chat to explore the rest of the sessions being offered today. They're throughout into the evening. And don't forget to fill out the survey as well. That will be emailed to you after the event to let us know how we did. As a reminder, these sessions are being recorded and will be available in the SNHU Career Services YouTube channel in 2 to 3 business days. So you'll be able to reference them at any time moving forward. And finally, lastly, there is the third link we'll be putting in is on Handshake. So there is additional sessions beyond Career Day that are available to our students on Handshake, both set up by us here at SNHU and then by employers themselves that you're able to access at any time and sign up for, etc. I know somebody asked about the writing space. We actually have a liberal arts week of events coming up in late January as an example, but a ton of stuff there. Kelsey just put the links in the chat. So thank you all for attending. Andrea, thank you so much. Did you have any closing remarks before we conclude?
No, thank you guys all for being here. I really enjoyed all of the questions and feedback. Again, just make it look like you're enjoying yourself in the digital interview process. Make it look like you're happy to be there, and they're going to feel your passion more than they hear your words most of the time.
Awesome. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a good day.